themselves. And I looked down the high street and I observed a woman at first glance with an extremely odd gait. Now, their gait is not like ours. She was a humanoid, but she walked almost penguin fashion. Her legs were lifted up, but her feet were outward, and her arm movements were extremely odd in that the arms were out at arm's length, and she waved circles with her hands. And I thought, this is very odd. And
yes.
She was about 20 yards, 30 yards ahead of me, and she eventually got level.
What was she wearing?
She was wearing the most unusual clothes I've ever seen, as you've probably seen from the pictures on my website.
Yes, but describe them, if you will, a little bit.
Well, it was more like a sort of pantomime attire, really. I mean, she had lots of things coming out, hanging out of her clothes, long, protruding, rather like an old sort of Elizabethan, I think they called them a ruff, and a tight-fitting body, and a very odd sort of dress. She was obviously female, but she was most certainly not human. Her eyes were in the orbit.
Yes. In other words,
she had
they were
bright blonde hair.
They weren't set into the skull, but they were like orbits. Yeah, I understand.
That's right.
Yes,
Their eyes are much bigger than ours.
Yes. Now, was there structure in the eyes?
Yes, there was.
Yes.
The picture that I've had drawn is not very good. I just couldn't get an artist to copy it completely.
Because it's impossible. I've had the same problem, believe me.
Yeah, I mean...
You can't get it right.
No, they can't. I mean, when you see something with your own eyes, trying to tell somebody else to do it, it doesn't work really.
Especially if it's something the person's never seen.
Yeah.
Very hard, yes. But go ahead.
Absolutely. But anyway, literally when she came level to me about 12 feet away, she stopped and she took in all the sights. She was thoroughly enjoying herself amongst us. A lot of people in Winchester saw her and realized this was, but she was just humanoid to get away with it.
So but many people saw her, not just you.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, not just me.
Folks, that happens a lot. It's not uncommon in this experience for us to get letters from people who have had experiences very similar to Councillor Hicks, and they always say everyone was walking down the street and they didn't stop or do anything. Did anyone speak to her?
Well, no. A lot of people observed her, but it was a busy Saturday, and I don't know in your culture, but on Saturday we've got all jobs to do.
Yeah, same here.
And so people just walk past.
Yes. Now, you have this, so here you are, and this has happened, and now, what are you left thinking? Because had you had any interest in this subject beforehand?
None, virtually none whatsoever.
And suddenly you see an alien walking down the main street of your town.
Yes, and interestingly, Mr. Strieber, I went ahead of her twice. Now, I observed this being for a very good period of time, at least 9 minutes. And she was absolutely lovely. She was so lovely, I didn't want to ruin her day amongst us. I went ahead in the high street to a shop called Russell and Bromley's in Winchester, and she slowly strolled up. She wasn't in a rush. She was thoroughly enjoying her visit amongst us. And she continued very, very, very slowly, because, as I say, Winchester High Street is full of 14th, 15th century architecture,
yes,
unusual clocks. This is a city town that dates back, hundreds of years, the ancient capital of England.
It's well worth a visit, by the way, folks, whether you expect to see her there or not.
Well, I didn't expect to see her there at all.
No, I'm just I'm saying to my audience that Winchester is well worth a visit. It's a lovely place.
Oh, it's beautiful. Yes. Absolutely beautiful. And as I say, I observed her for 9 maybe even 10 minutes actually. Finally, she got within about, I'd say 10 feet ahead of me. I did have the opportunity, and I, we all have things in life we were, but I didn't want to ruin a day, and I could have gone and spoken to her, and she was thoroughly enjoying it. She was smiling. She clearly didn't think anybody had twigged she wasn't one of us.
Right.
That's how it came out.
Now, did you see any human beings anywhere in the street that seemed to be with her or shadowing her from a distance, or were you noticing that sort of thing?
To be perfectly honest, I wasn't looking because I was completely fixed on her.
Yes, of course.
Now, whether she was allowed out with escorts, I've no idea. I really don't know. That's a very good question. I would have assumed she would have had escorts, and maybe it was a trial to see how we would react. Interestingly enough, I carried an invitation on my person ever since I saw her for about 2 years, because I would have loved, my partner and I, Bernadette, would have loved to invite her around. She was totally friendly. I didn't feel threatened in any way.
It's interesting that you didn't speak to her, and your explanations as to why not are a little thin. And one wonders, I've been in situations like that before myself and come out of them thinking, why didn't I do this or why didn't I do that? Well, and it's really very hard to explain to oneself.
Yeah. Well, I work in an accident and emergency department.
Yes.
My job is that I set broken bones, and I've worked there for 36 years. And in that job, we make a very quick initial assessment. Now, yes, I could have spoken to her, and I know she'd have spoken back, without a doubt. But as I say, I didn't want to ruin it for her. She was in her own little world, thoroughly enjoying ours.
She seemed enclosed in herself.
Oh, very much.
This is not the first time something truly extraordinary has happened there and been reported publicly.
That is correct.
Could you tell us a little bit about the previous incident?
Yes. In 1976 and 1977, two well-known Winchester citizens, Joyce Bowles and Ted Pratt, had, again, an incident where they met extraterrestrials in Chilcombe, on a road where their car suddenly broke down with a UFO above it. And they had, a very close encounter with them, and they met the extraterrestrials, I think, 2 or 3 times.
And they had, what came of this? Did they say anything about the nature of these meetings?
They didn't. They certainly, it was reported in all the national press, and it went all around the world. And in fact, you can still read the reports on Google. But Joyce always said she'd never repeat what was said to her by these extraterrestrials. Interestingly enough, they said that the land around Chilcombe, which is a village 2.5 miles outside of Winchester, is theirs.
Yes, that's true in many places. We live without knowing it on land that is theirs.
That's right.
That's right. People would be very surprised to know that perhaps there were other deeds somewhere else that had little or nothing to do with their deeds.
That's right.
Yeah, you're the first person I've ever talked to. I'm in a position where I can, if somebody says something, I can then talk about it, but I can't unless they say it first. So, yes, the planet is divided up very elaborately into different spheres of influence that are very much like deeded properties. Absolutely, that's correct.
Yes, and this group of beings, interestingly enough, the description that Joyce and Mr. Pratt gave are exactly the same as the being that I saw. She did have slightly pinky eyes, and so they're one and the same. So they've obviously been here a while.
Yes, indeed. Well, perhaps longer than we have. Who knows?